7 games next to 6, 7 wins next to 6 is running away, although in this division, a whole game, it's like, oh my God, who could ever overcome a game? No, I don't think. Let me look at their schedule. Because the Giants have gotten better and some of these teams gotten worse, you don't think of it as unwinnable. They're competitive games. But Arizona and Baltimore and Cleveland, those are tough games. If the Giants go 2-2 over the next 4, that gets them to 7 wins and probably wins the division. Washington's schedule's a little easier, not much. But I think Washington and the Giants are trending in the right direction, and the other two teams are trending in the wrong direction. And really, next year, to me, is the make or break as far as Gettleman's kind of overall vision for this team. And I made a lot of fun of Gettleman on the air. He took a running back, 2nd overall. Love me some Saquon Barkley. You are not supposed to do that. He reached for a quarterback, number 6. Heading into year 3, which would be next year, that guy has to be an above-average quarterback, right? If he is, Gettleman will look good and the Giants will be in a great position. If Daniel Jones is just average or a tick below average, then the whole 3 years is a bust. So that's where I am with the Giants. This year, they're probably going to win the worst division in football. It doesn't concern me. I'm looking to next year.
I think when you're as bad as the Giants have been and you see them go out and hire a coach who was not even a coordinator, and every single game they've gotten better. And every single game, they play harder and harder. And they don't have Saquon Barkley. They didn't have Odell Beckham Jr. anymore. There is no Eli Manning, and now you got Daniel Jones. And somehow, some way, devoid of experience, devoid of sensational athletic play, devoid of any kind of tradition to really, really lean on from the immediate past, and to go out there and to coach this team the way that he has, I can't say enough about the job that I think Joe Judge has done. I don't think the record is indicative of how good he's been as head coach of the New York Giants. If I'm a team that is struggling the way that they have been struggling in recent memory, okay, and I bring on a guy that comes from the Belichick tree, and I see a guy that has no coordinator's background whatsoever, and every single week they get better and better and better and play harder and harder and harder. And they're starting to win their share of games. You got to tip your cap to this guy. This guy, Joe Judge, has been very impressive. Getting into the argument with his offensive line coach, getting rid of him, obviously getting somebody else in there and what have you, bringing somebody in at the time because you knew there were problems with your offensive line. He just seems to be pushing all the right buttons. He holds dudes accountable. Everybody's focused on doing their jobs. I think there's a lot to be excited about if you're a Giants fan by Joe Judge. I've been very impressed with what I've seen from him.
Yeah, like, isn't it too late in the season for the Giants to kind of like run away with the division? But let's look at who they are and what they are. And first start with Joe Judge. Isn't Joe Judge everything to the New York Giants that the Detroit Lions start Matt Patricia would be?
Yes.
And what the Giants are showing you, the Mara family, and very much like the Rooney family, is when you get a dude in the office and it's time for the interview and he may not be the front runner, but you feel it, right? But you feel something about the person. You see that he's a leader of men. That dude can usually be a head coach. He can coach football. It doesn't mean he doesn't know the X's and O's, but it means that the X's and O's aren't the only reason that you want to hire this man. And that's what Joe Judge has been. And so now you look at guys like John Harbaugh, who was also a special teams coordinator, but who understood the pulse of a team. He understood how to motivate. And now Joe Judge has a team that has the one consistent trait in the NFC East that no other team has. They consistently compete. They consistently play hard. They're consistently about effort. And because of that, they've been in the last 7 games. They've had opportunities to win. And so when you look at going forward, all the little pieces Max said, like, those things are correct. But they have a huge piece of it in that they're going to play a certain way every day. They have a defense that is stout up front, that rushes the passer well, plays good on the back end, and you now have an offensive line that is creating runs and creating rushing yards with Wayne Gallman and Alfred Morris. That's a team that is building for the future. And so, though they may not run away with the NFC East this year, if Daniel Jones finishes or becomes the quarterback that DG thought he was when he drafted him 6th overall, this is the team that going forward in the future could be a contender in the NFC.
Yeah, I would just say that Washington also has been playing better and better, also with good culture from the top now with Ron Rivera. I do like they've been trending in the right direction, basically. And here's the other thing that I noticed about Joe Judge. You know, when he started and he was doing all these things that seemed to be very hard on the players and coaches, that stuff almost always backfires with a rookie coach, right? Especially a dude who's jumped levels. But he got guys to buy in. And that means he believes that they believe he is putting them in a position to win. So they're willing to go the extra mile for him. That's great. Him, Flores in Miami, Vrabel, like suddenly the Belichick coaching tree, which had been a barren wasteland in the NFL, suddenly is bearing fruit.
But the other thing is, I don't mean to cut y'all off. The other thing is, think about that, though. Josh McDaniels doesn't necessarily do very well. Matt Patricia doesn't necessarily do very well. But when these guys were starting to be interviewed, everything was about the X's and O's. Think about it. It was about the way they called plays, the way that they coordinated defenses and offense. Flores, it was about the person. Joe Judge, it was about the person. Mike Vrabel, the same thing. It's not just because you coach under a guy and you can learn what he thinks about the football field. It's about what you can learn, how he thinks about football players. And I think those type of coaches are the more successful ones from the Belichick tree.
So far, so good. They got the Cards, Browns, and then Ravens coming up. So tough stretch. We'll see if they can keep it going. Let's get all right, Max, let's get right to it, because you know I was super hyped last night watching that game. I still can't believe they pulled it off. Do you think the Giants are now going to run away with the NFC East?
They ain't running away with nothing unless you consider like a game by NFC East standards. Like, oh my God, it's insurmountable. A whole football game. No, they're not running away with anything, and that has a lot to do with their schedule, although when you look at the schedule, you don't see that's an unwinnable game, like Baltimore right now. A couple weeks ago, you go, man, the Giants are going to get killed, like a month ago. Not anymore. It's a winnable game. Arizona's a winnable game. You know, these are games they can win, but when you look at their schedule, you figure maybe they're 2-2, something like that. And if they're a little bit better than that, great. Cleveland's playing very well right now. You'd like the Giants over the Cowboys last week of the season, but 3 of their next 4, the Giants will be underdogs. And the Washington football team, who, like the Giants, has been trending better and better as the season goes on, who, like the Giants, had a culture change before the season started, although in Washington's case, they had more of a known commodity as a head coach. In the Giants' case, they were hoping that they picked the right guy. But in any event, Washington's schedule's not as bad as the Giants, although it's not a cupcake schedule. The main thing I notice is that for the Giants and for Washington, the schedule doesn't look as tough as it used to because our perception of them has changed. You know, when you think differently about your football team and you look at a game like Arizona or Baltimore or Cleveland and you think your team is really no good. If it was the Jets, you go, gonna lose. Unless you see a Bengals pop up somewhere or maybe a Panthers, you go, maybe that's a winnable game. But the way the Giants and Washington are playing, you look at those same games, you go, they have a chance to win. For example, today, Pittsburgh, right? That's an undefeated team. And I think because they beat the Ravens, but the way they beat them, Tomlin really came down on them. Maybe they don't fall into a trap, Pittsburgh against Washington. But otherwise, that's a kind of a trap game. Washington doesn't have a good record, but they do play defense. They've been playing better than advertised this year. Meantime, the Steelers are coming off a Ravens game where obviously the emotions get up, and as Ryan Clark says, best time to play the Steelers or the Ravens is after they play each other, right? All of a sudden, I look at that game, I go, I think Pittsburgh's going to beat Washington. But I think partly that has to do with motivation. In other words, that's not such a bad win anymore. That's kind of a quality win. So, Stephen A., I don't see the Giants with something like a 2-game plus lead in that division. I think it's going to be tight.
Max, I got to tell you something, man. I mean, listen. I can't definitively say this, but I think it's possible. I think it's possible that they can run away with the NFC East. First of all, the Eagles are trash. We're just there. They're trash. All right, that's number one. All right, you get them out of the way. Then you got Washington, okay? Washington's got Pittsburgh. They've got San Francisco. They've got Seattle. They've got Carolina on their schedule. I mean, Washington could end up folding for the rest of the season. We can't summarily dismiss that their defense is real. Offensively, they're challenged. We understand that. So you got to look at it from that perspective. The Dallas Cowboys are the Dallas Cowboys. What can go wrong will go wrong. And it'll start tomorrow night even more so, snowballing, because Lamar Jackson will probably be back. The Baltimore Ravens playoff lives are on the line, and they're going up against the Dallas Cowboys. So what a convenient element on their schedule. So I'm going to look at it from that perspective. And then last but not least, I got to take this into account. Max Kellerman, did I not come on the air weeks ago and specifically state this dude, Joe Judge, looks like the right man for the job? Every single week we have watched the New York Giants, they have improved. Whether they had Saquon Barkley when he goes down, whether they had Daniel Jones, ultimately when he goes down, when you watch the New York Giants, this guy, Joe Judge, seems to be the right man for the job. I can't say enough about the guy thus far. They play hard all the time. They improve every single week. And considering where they were and what we considered them to be, and to watch them go out and play the way that they play, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, they're a top 10 defense, number 8 overall, top 5, meaning number 4 against the run. These brothers come and they play and they get after you. So you're going to be in a dogfight. You're going to have an opportunity to win games because that defense usually gives you that opportunity. And when you combine that with the ineptitude that exists within the rest of the NFC East, not even taking into account their schedule, just what you've seen thus far, and then you take into account the level of competition Washington is going to have to go against, the fact that the Dallas Cowboys are who they are, and we know that the Eagles are trash, I definitely think the NFC East is ripe to be had by the New York Giants and Coach Joe Judge and his defensive coordinator.
But I like your points about Joe Judge. I'm going to get to that in a second. First of all, Ron Rivera is a real guy, too. And when you look at the division, the teams with the coaches that you go, okay, that's a culture change. Those are the teams, New York and Washington, trending in the right direction. And those were the teams considered bottom feeders in a bottom-feeding division. So I have to say that about Washington, who usually I think is the weakest team in the division. As far as Joe Judge is concerned, you were right about Joe Judge. Joe Judge, when you do those kind of hard-nosed tactics with the players, you're hard on the players, you're hard on the coaches, early on as a rookie head coach, that could backfire. You have to do it with substance. You have to do it in a way where the team believes that you care about their best interests, right? And Joe Judge has pulled that off so far. It seems to me he's gotten buy-in, and that's great. I'm a huge Giants fan. That's great. I'll say something else. Colt McCoy is a solid NFL backup, but that's what he is, a backup. 100 yards, a touchdown, and an interception, and the Giants were able to beat Seattle with a backup. Daniel Jones, I'd say, is an average or maybe still a tick below average starter, only in his second year, so maybe he can be better than that by next year. But an average-ish starter obviously gives you a premium over an average-ish backup, and Colt McCoy just won a game. So they should get better when Daniel Jones gets back, and so far his rehab is promising. All that said, I'm not going to say the Giants are running away with it. I think it's going to be close between the Giants and Washington, and the division is so bad, Stephen A., if the Eagles steal a win, if the Cowboys get a win, and don't forget, the Cowboys beat the Vikings not long ago. The Vikings are pretty good. If either one of those teams gets a win, there's so few wins necessary in that division, suddenly our perception changes.
Well, first of all, I'm going to say this to you respectfully. I don't think your argument makes much sense when you praise Joe Judge the way that you have, because the bottom line is, if you've watched this man coach and you see the improvement on the New York Giants, and you remember your comments about the NFC East and how pathetic they have been, then it stands to reason, based on what you're seeing alone with the return of Daniel Jones being imminent, that this team is going to continue to ascend. And we can't say anything else about the Dallas Cowboys. You can't say that about the Eagles. You might be able to say that about the Washington Redskins, but we're really not sure as of yet. So we got to take that into consideration. I'll leave this for you and Molly as diehard Giants fans. If Joe Judge, the way he looks, I'm only going by what we've seen thus far, okay? Because obviously the future will tell us more. Based on what we have seen thus far, y'all, if Joe Judge was the coach of the Los Angeles Chargers, they'd be Super Bowl contenders.
I don't know about Super Bowl contenders, Stephen A. I think that they wouldn't have lost 45-0. It wouldn't have been such a mismatch as Warren Sharp predicted, Belichick versus Anthony Lynn, the worst coaching mismatch you could probably get right now, right? And I'll say this, since you point that out, the Bill Belichick coaching tree has always been a disaster in the NFL. But how you like Brian Flores down in Miami? How you liking Joe Judge in New York? Promising returns on young coaches right now off the Belichick tree.
No question. Making lemonade, really doing something special. And I just want to give a quick shout to Leonard Williams and that defense. They're forcing more 3 and out than they're allowing scoring drives, and they were super impressive yesterday as well.
He's had
and they've been
2.5
underrated
seconds.
so far this season on this win streak, obviously. All right, guys.